Alright YouTube, JR Juggernaut 1 here. Now, I'm trying to get these two videos up before YCS Long Beach starts tomorrow, and these are both important videos, so let's pretty much get to it. Now, we all know about what are considered to be the big three decks right now: Dino Rabbit, Windups, and Inzektors. Now, I don't want to talk about those big three decks, but there are a set of big three decks I want to talk about right now, and those are hero decks. Now, in my opinion, heroes are one of the most underrated decks of the format right now. The deck has a lot of power plays and a lot of ways of dealing with each of these decks. This has been achieved in different ways, but I will get to that. There are three decks right now that I think are just kind of that are becoming popular. One of which, well, okay, I'll just get to the decks. Now, the first one I want to get to is probably one of the more common ones, and it's easy to see why. And that would be Skill Drain Hero Beat. Skill Drain is basically the card that destroys the big three decks. Dino Rabbit it doesn't have a huge impact on, but it is a card that will stop them from locking you down if you time it correctly, which is really good, obviously. Skill Drain, it just, you know, it wrecks. It wrecks the Inzektor and the Dino Rabbit matchup, and Inzektor and Windup matchups as well. So you essentially have a card that just, you know, when you activate it, if they don't have the MST to it, you know, they destroy it. There is one problem with this card that I think people need to realize, and this is something that I'm worried other decks will start to pick up on, especially Inzektors. If you lance a monster while Skill Drain is out, they are no longer affected by Skill Drain. This is very problematic in Inzektors because it gives them another out aside from MST in dealing with Skill Drain, because they can go Forbidden Lance and then immediately attach Hornet, and yeah, believe it or not, Hornet can still be attached even under Lance's conditions. It's weird, but it actually does make sense. Aside from that, though, Skill Drain is very powerful, so it shouldn't be counted out. Alistair Alban posted of his own version of the deck that he and Fraser Smith were testing. He posted on ultrarealitygames.com. I personally think the deck is one of the better builds I've seen. I'm just wondering, is it the right decision to not run Max Seer Effect Veiler? And the presence of hand traps in this format is something else I could talk about, but honestly there isn't much for me to say because I haven't formulated much of an opinion on that. So all I'm going to say is, this is a very viable option. Just keep in mind that the big weakness of the deck, it's not as fast as other hero variants. So it will be a bit more difficult to gain momentum with the deck. However, again, Skill Drain, very game-breaking card, so I can't say this is a bad choice by any means. Just keep in mind you will have trouble with certain other decks, aside from, you know, that aren't the big three if you play this deck. That's something to keep in mind. Let's talk about the next. I guess this is theoretically more popular, or at least it's starting to gain a lot of popularity, but I have to share my thoughts on it because I can't understand. This is going to be a proxy for Bubble Man, and I'm talking about Bubble Beat, obviously. Now, theoretically, Bubble Beat can run Skill Drain. Some people have chosen to main it or at least side it. That's beside the point, though. A lot of people are really hyping this deck up, and I personally don't understand, aside from the fact that it's aggro. Yes, the deck is aggro. It can protect, it can, you know, it can basically put your opponent in a situation where they're dealing with one annoying beat stick, and they have, and you have all this back row to stop their plays as well. Here's my problem with the deck, though. Number one, I should say problems. Number one, you are put in top decking mode a lot with this deck, simply for the fact that you're going to be playing Bubble Man, and you're going to set your whole hand, and you might have some cards that could be playable while they're set, but ultimately, you're going to be in the situation where, you're going to end up in a situation where you're going to be hoping you top deck something that gets you out of the situation. A timely Heavy Storm can really cause your demise, and the low monster count just really, in my opinion, hurts the deck more than it helps. It means you're going to draw more back rows, but if you don't draw your monsters, you're kind of screwed. Yes, I'm aware of all the search power in this deck, but I still think the deck isn't all that consistent, especially when you take into account that 3 of the general 7 monsters that will be played are Bubble Man, and Bubble Man sucks by himself. I see the potential with this deck, and I see where people are going. I don't think it's a bad deck at all. I just don't think it's the best hero deck you should be running. I would rather run Skill Drain Hero Beat, because at least that can have more control, and it's less combo oriented. And combo decks aren't bad. Wind Up's a very good example. But Wind Up also kind of has that same problem. If it can't set up its Wind Up loop or huge combos, they usually lose, at least from my experience. So, yeah, keep that in mind. Now, the last deck I want to talk about, kind of obvious, because I've been hyping this deck up for a while, Masked Hero Beat, utilizing Mass Change. Most of the hero decks right now, you'll notice, aren't really utilizing this card, at least the two that I mentioned. Mass Change is not a card you're throwing into either of those decks. Bubble Beat you can hypothetically throw in one, but the problem is more than one isn't going to work for you. In my opinion, Masked Hero Beat though is the best deck to run, at least this is how I feel at the time of this video. Masked Hero Beat just gives you more power cards, but also a fair monster count to go along with it. Yes, it's true you are somewhat reliant on the power cards, whereas in at least Skill Drain Hero Beat, you have big power cards in the form of something like Beast King Barbaros. But I still feel like, this card gives you a lot of versatility in the fact that it's a quick play spell, and it doesn't send the monster to grave as a cost. I feel like this card is just overall very powerful, and Masked Hero Acid is utterly ridiculous if you play it correctly. My deck mostly utilizes the water monsters, but, it also utilizes Dion and Goka on occasion, and Vapor, of course, as well. I should have mentioned, yeah, he's another water one. I find the deck to just be the most versatile, and when I have a finalized build, I will post it for you guys. But all I will say is this: it's basically a deck that runs a little bit more monsters compared to Bubble Beat. It runs probably about the same as Skill Drain Hero Beat, depending on how many you're running. If it runs about 11 monsters, including hand traps, but it doesn't run many. I will say that right now. It only runs a few because I just don't find them all. I'm not sure. I haven't found them all that effective at the moment. But yeah, it runs the few hand traps, and then it's just you've got the rest of the monsters are just all heroes, and they just put in work. And ultimately, the idea is you want to thin the deck out and hopefully draw into your power cards, which are 3 Mass Change, 3 Miracle Fusion, and 2 Super Poly. But again, I will talk about a more finalized list later on. It's not a very trap-heavy deck, though, so Royal Decree isn't going to do all that much to this deck, thankfully. Which can be the problem of Skill Drain Hero Beat and Bubble Beat because of the heavy trap lineups. I like heavy trap lineups, I'll be honest. But I also kind of like the fact that my deck has a lot of action in the form of quick play spells, which can't be destroyed by Decree, but they can also disrupt your opponent's plays. So keep that in mind. Okay, so those are basically the decks. Now, it's just a matter of which kind of hero deck you prefer. Again, if you're looking for more of the lockdown, I'd say go for Skill Drain Hero Beat. If you want kind of a balance of like control with very few monsters and just kind of beating down your opponent in a very aggro playstyle, Bubble Beat's kind of the way to go. But if you are like me and you want what's the most versatile, again, I say Masked Hero Beat. It doesn't run Skill Drain, which is obviously a very crippling card, but it does mean you'll be more prepared for most of the matchups that you play. And this is just my opinion, but again, I'm speaking from experience here. So yeah, guys, that's my discussion for now. Hope you enjoyed. Stay tuned. Right after this, I'm gonna post a discussion on YCS Long Beach. So yeah, peace out, guys.